It's Femi in Shoreditch. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you very much indeed, sir. Am I wrong to think that a second referendum is not desirable but possible, and that Leavers should get prepared?
Well, from everything I've heard, most Brexit voters aren't particularly happy with the way negotiations are going. They don't like the bill, they don't like the transition period, so I think even most Brexiters would think that it's their right to be able to review the deal. I mean, it's the will of the people. If the will of the people says that the negotiations are going to leave Britain in a worse position, then saying that they shouldn't have a say doesn't really make sense. And I was actually calling in relation to something you said earlier. You were saying how your fear of a EU army was one of the reasons why you said we needed to have Brexit. What's exactly the reasoning behind that? Because defence policy requires unanimity, so they can't force us into an EU army. They can form one by themselves.
Okay. No, fine, understood. In his State of the Union speech, Mr. Juncker couldn't have been clearer. You know, we know that the European Union has had an emerging foreign policy over the course of the last few years. One of the constraints upon Brussels, and the Commission in particular, in doing what it would like to do with foreign policy, much of which, Femi, of course, includes expansion, which to the east, which I find very worrying in the case of Ukraine and others. But one of the reasons that has really inhibited them, as you quite rightly say, is that any country at the moment can veto a foreign policy idea for the European Union. What Juncker said in that speech clearly, and to a standing ovation in the European Parliament from political groups from right, centre and left, is that we will get rid of the veto on foreign policy, giving the European Union freedom to act. Now, Femi, I put this to you, that if you have a European Union that is expansionist, if you have a European Union whose foreign policy is no longer constrained in the same way by veto, and you have a European army, I find that a pretty worrying cocktail.
But here's the thing, though. The removal of veto would mean a transfer of powers from the state level to the EU level. The separation of powers in terms of who controls what, that's outlined in the treaties. In order to change that, you would need a unanimous unanimous decision to change the treaty.
Yes.
So they literally can't remove our veto because we can veto the removal of vetoes.
Well,
so saying so in order for that to happen, we would have to agree. As a country, we have the sovereign right to agree whether or not they take away our power of veto. So saying, let's Brexit because they might have an EU army, let's Brexit because they might remove our vetoes, these are all things we have complete control over.
The trouble is, Femi, you can't, as a member of a club, veto everything. You know, there is always an element of horse trading that goes on. You can't just sit there and say no to everything.
Veto everything.
You can say no to some things, but not to everything. Femi, with or
we're not saying no to everything.
With or without us, would you agree with me that it is becoming, and they want it to be, an increasingly militarised European Union?
There are elements within the EU. For example, Juncker, who you keep mentioning,
he's the boss.
He's the boss.
Yeah.
Until 2019, something else happens that year. I forget what that is. Brexit. The year we leave to avoid people like Juncker is the year Juncker himself leaves, because commissioners have a 5-year term, after which they're chosen by the head of state that we elect.
Do you know, Femi, who the bookie's favourite is to succeed Juncker?
No, tell me.
It's Barnier. Barnier sees himself as the next big boss. Femi, I thank you for your points and for your call. Richard is calling from Manningtree. Good morning, Richard.